Hello, this is Hillary Jordan. We are doing a human design intro class again, and my website is www.hillarieselementsofhealth.com, and we're just going to go over basic principles. We may turn this off rather abruptly too, I apologize. Okay, so this is, I think, the best book if you want to study human design. It's Chaitin Parkin. I don't believe that books are good for studying human design very much, actually. I like to go online. I like to go either to loveyourdesign.com, it's Liz Gould's website, or I like to go to humandesign.com, loveyourhumandesign.com. There's a lot of them that sound similar. There's a Human Design Hawaii page, it's good. There's a lot of human design stuff on the internet. I think it's all good. The only problem with it is when it speaks in Ra Uruhu's language, which is very cryptic and hard to understand the way he talked. He's actually dead now. He is the founder of human design. He went to an island called Ibiza off the coast of Spain and had a downloading channeling situation in the 80s, and that's where human design came from. It sounds like a very odd beginning. But the more that you look at human design, the more it makes sense to you just on a practical, even like the flow of energy between two people, the interaction level, or the level of like how you manage your energy as a body, you know, and as a physical system, like how does that best happen? Because when people find out, for instance, that they're manifestors or projectors, that's a huge deal. And when they find out other things like they're emotional or they have the mental center, those are two pretty good things to know about yourself too. So this stuff can change everything, but this is the lecture that I like to give. Here's my I did one more. Is this yours, Ben?
Oh.
So I did one more weird. Okay. I did one more chart that has the circles on it. Then there are people here?
These.
Looked upstairs. Sorry. I'm just going to use yours for a second. Okay, so this is my health model chart. I'm going to show it to the video. This is my health model, and when you look at the inside of it, you have your soul. This is what I've learned from going on my journey of trying to figure stuff out for so long. And I basically did not have a lot of energy or a lot of physical strength, but I was a dancer and I wanted to figure out how to be more healthy and more strong and be able to do everything I wanted to do, right? Well, I ended up learning a lot of stuff that ended up being my career instead of just helping me dance. I still dance, but it's not quite as much the focus of things as this is. So what I learned from going to many, many places. First of all, San Francisco State University, I did a holistic health program there. I created my own major there, and then I went to Mercer University of Management in Iowa, and I got a master's in Vedic science, which is a weird subject that is basically the study of consciousness, and the study of Vedic literature, which are the oldest books that we think exist. And I got another BA in physiology and health from the Ayurvedic perspective, so I did a lot of Ayurvedic medicine, which is like Indian medicine. I did some Chinese medicine. I learned a lot of yoga, meditation. I went to massage school 2 different times. I am now a body worker and an energy worker. And I do a lot of stuff like this. Like I teach classes about this kind of stuff. And I do readings in human design, the Enneagram, and Vedic astrology. Not normal Western astrology, slightly different, but very fun. I teach classes and all that stuff. And I do a lot of belief and emotional processing work that we'll talk about in a second. Because the way that I see it now, this is pretty simplistic, right? But you are a soul. You have a mind, body, which some of it came in with you, and that would be called your karma if you're talking about it from a really Indian perspective. But you don't have to talk about it that way. It's totally, you don't have to believe anything I say, actually, as far as I'm concerned. I'm cool with all of it, you know. But this is what I've learned, is that you've got the mental body right around your karma. So your mental body really is what you think, how you think of yourself in your life, and what box you're putting yourself into every day when you wake up. When you say, oh, I'm Brittany, or whatever, when you wake up, right? You have a little moment of like, maybe some people know this, like a little moment of like, who am I again? What is it? Where am I? And then you are like, oh yeah, I'm this person, and oh yeah, I'm American, and but you don't think of that every day. It just happens in your brain, right? And I am of this ethnicity, and I do these things every day, and all of that stuff is mental concept stuff that's in your head that actually tends to limit everything for you. And from those beliefs and those concepts, then you also have emotional baggage that's around that. Sometimes I think emotional baggage can actually cause mental stuff, but the way that I look at it is the mind is more subtle than the emotions, just slightly. When you deal with emotions, you're still in a very subtle place, and you're going to affect the energy body, which is the next body out from that, and you're going to affect the mind body, which is the one closest, those two that are closest to it, okay? If you're dealing with the energy body, so you're getting energy work, or you're doing yoga or meditation, or acupuncture, or some things like that, if you're dealing with the energy body, then you're going to be affecting the emotional body and affecting the physical body. The physical body, right, is where we all kind of know that we have a body, and we have to exercise and eat food and get sleep and stuff. When you get to that subtle place in the physical body where you notice that the food is affecting your body and the medication might be a little too strong, and then you have to take maybe some herbs or special foods instead of medication, that's when you start getting more clear and closer to the energetic body. So that's kind of the way I went from it, was from the physical body inward. I learned about the energy body, I learned about the emotional body, I learned about the mental body from that way, But so it doesn't matter which way you learn about it, but in order to affect your health, though, my feeling now is that if you do not affect the mental, emotional, and soul part of you, then you do not affect the energy in the physical body. So that's why you see people going on diets forever and doing exercise regimes forever and eating certain things and going to bed at certain times or whatever they're trying to do with their physical body that is creating some good change sometimes and also not affecting things that deeply in a certain way too, right? Like, we don't usually see our beliefs change from eating different food, although it can happen. I've seen it happen before, but it's not like, it takes a long time, generally speaking, is what happens. So one of my mentors, when he found me doing a ton of meditation and Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurvedic herbs and diet all the time, I was doing yoga, and he came up to me and was like, wow, you're not really evolving very fast anymore. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, because you're not dealing with the emotional body at all. And I can feel all your emotional stuff going on. And I was like, well, that actually, I cannot deny that. And I was like, I want you to take me somewhere and teach me all about that, if you know. Because nobody had taught me anything about how to deal with feelings on the entire journey of, health, self-discovery, and whatever else you want to call it, for 10 years, okay? Nobody had even approached emotions. And I have to say, right, psychology does not always really deal with them in a way that actually works other than just to cope, kind of, to make every day a little bit better or prevent the bad stuff from being quite so bad, maybe. So that's why now I'm so a proselytizer for dealing with mind and emotions, always. Because if you do that, then it actually does affect your energy body and your physical body, and it takes a little while, but you can see the effects. And I'm not saying not to deal with the physical body at the same time, because you have to do that a lot of the time at the same time as you're dealing with the mental and emotional body. But this is my little chart that shows that I think we're all very similar. We're all unity. We're all soul at the core. So we're all part of that same soul. And so when we talk about all of our differences, we're going to start talking about the mental body, or the places that we're different in the mental, emotional, and energy bodies here. Obviously, your human design chart does not show your physical body, but it shows definitely how your energy flows. So we will be in that energy body for sure. It will say something about your feelings, in that energy body. But in order to change things, this is just like information about yourself. In order to change things, you've got to do work, do like some actual feeling and clearing and healing of the mind and emotions. So I just like to say that before we start talking about who's like this and who's like that, because that is all information that's just from when you were born, and so you came in like that, and it doesn't really tell you how to change anything if you need help now, which most people do. I mean, we all need help now, healing stuff that is not working for us anymore, So, but it's useful to have this information first to be able to start maybe rearranging your life a little bit around it and like start to kind of have it in your head as an educational thing for yourself to be a little bit more healthy in an energetic way. And same with the other personality systems, the Enneagram, the astrology stuff, it's all useful for that kind of stuff too, but I think human design is a little bit more about energy and social interaction, working with people, and how to take care of your energy body in a healthy way. It's a little bit more about that stuff than just your personality structure, which is definitely how astrology and the Enneagram personality system really focus on, like your personality structure. How did your ego develop when you were a kid? There's a little bit of that in here too, but this one is much more fun in some ways for some people, I think. I love all of them. So I always want to emphasize that before we start doing readings, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to put you guys on different sides based on what centers you've got and see how you compare it to other people in the room. You'll go around a lot. We have different types of people. We have different centers. We have different profile types. We have different authorities in here. I did not print out your authority information because that is a whole long other thing that I didn't know if you want all that paper, but I do have it available to send as an email if people want it, and maybe we should make sure that we got everybody's email addresses before we leave, including yours.
I don't know why it's not working on my stuff for some reason with some people, but it doesn't.
It's
it
weird.
doesn't work.
It went through to you once.
Yeah, I've got 2 emails from you, and they were sent to me a long time ago.
Okay, so this is the thing about human design. Who cognized it on Ibiza in the 80s or something, and then people started studying it kind of like astrology. At first, I think people were just like, that's pretty weird, But it's now like become more popular than astrology or a lot of other things because it kind of addresses a lot of weird specifics about people that may not have been addressed in other systems. So the first thing to talk about is type. And so I told you about different resources to study. I've just been studying human design for about 6 years. I did not do the $20,000 training. I do not even actually subscribe to Jovian. Like, I don't go to Jovian Archive for my information, and I don't listen to Ra Uru, who is the creator of the system, for my information, because interestingly enough, even though he was a manifestor, he created the system, he has a lot of information to share. I don't like the way that he put it out there a lot of the time. I feel like a lot of times he was kind of, we were talking about this before, Manifestor, sometimes he was kind of like holding himself above people and looking down on them. And I don't feel like he was looking at people's charts in the most positive way and the way that you could really work with people's emotions and concept, belief stuff, because you can work with anything, no matter what their chart is, okay? So he got a little bit crazy about charts because, like, if you look up different things, they're all really, really expensive also. And if you look up things that he said about stuff, for instance, that he even had a whole meal plan, a whole, like, way of eating, but he emphasized that it was a way of eating, not an actual diet. And he'll go on a big, righteous, long a lecture about it, and I don't mind putting this on the internet because other humans know this. He'll go on a big, like, long lecture about, like, how it's really just about the way you eat, and it's like, come on, because we all know that the kind of food you eat also affects, things. So now I've been all controversial and putting this one on the internet, but I don't care. So I really love to look at people who study human design on their own, like especially women sometimes, because it can be a little bit like black and white or cut and dry when you're coming from raw who. So there are different types of people. That's the first thing we talk about. So we have in this room, we have a manifestor, a projector, an emotional generator, a sacral generator, and the types that we don't have in the room then are a reflector or a manifesting generator. A reflector is the most rare type of person. You will not see reflectors very much at all. I had one reflector friend in Fairfield, in the weird town I lived in Iowa. They have no centers. So when you're looking at your charts, if you look at a reflector, they have no centers on their charts filled in at all. So they're completely reflecting back everybody around them all the time.
Oh my gosh, that's scary.
Yeah. And those of us who are sensitive at all are like, oh, holy crap, I don't want to be a reflector ever. But interestingly enough, well, some people said that Amma, the hugging saint, was a reflector. I'm not sure that's really true anymore. That might be controversial information. Michael Jackson was definitely a reflector. And we can tell he didn't live very long. But he also was obviously very popular. He was reflecting everyone else's positive energy back at them. So that's why it's like you can't even get away from his songs now. I mean, they're still on the radio, you know. So that's the most unusual type. Now, they do have some things in common with projector, like Ben and I are. Projectors we'll do next then. Reflectors, by the way, they have to wait a whole 28 days before they make a decision or before they like really do anything. That's a really long process, and that's another thing that sucks about being a reflector. Projectors have to wait for the invitation. That's our strategy. So there's a strategy for each type. Projectors are here to help generators. They are not here to do work, which is why I do weird things like teach classes. Most of the time, if you gave me a 9-to-5 job, I would completely burn. I'd probably be in the hospital, actually, to be honest, because I've had a lot of normal work situations that I ended up like slowly degenerating into an unhealthy situation. So projectors have to get special rest and everything because what they're doing is bringing in everyone else's energy and then reflecting it back out at them all the time. It's not quite as intense as being a reflector because they have some of their own energy centers where they came in with energy. So if you looked at my chart, for instance, I have energy centers down the root, the intuition, and the ego, and they're all kind of in the lower half, but they are where I'm drawing my strength from to do stuff. So even though I'm like teaching a heady class or whatever, I'm not really using this. I'm like using my energy, you know, and my intuition. And when I help people like healing work, I use my intuition and strength of ego, which is like willpower. Like I'm going to do this, you know. So that's the thing about all of your charts is wherever you have colored in spaces is where you have your energy that you came into this life to use, and you don't mind my terminology because if you don't believe, you know, in stuff I say like reincarnation, it doesn't matter because it still works. So those are the places that you would have energy. If you think about that search chart. So
I feel like this is not it.
Okay.
I mean, this is for fun, but
okay. So the next type of person, let's do manifestors next. They're only 7%.
Hey, yeah.
And I'm looking at Ben because he's been in so many of my classes now. Now I'm like, what did I teach you, Ben? No. But he's studying human design a lot. And manifestors, there's like 1% reflectors, 20% projectors. I think it's like 7 to 9% manifestors or something. Manifestors are supposed to be in charge of generators. They're supposed to tell generators what to do. If you listen to Ra Uru, he said that manifestors are like the old style of leader, And projectors are going to be the new style of leader in the future, where they'll have to be invited by generators to lead them. So it'll be a little bit more flexible and about what the person needs that is being led. Don't worry, that's just it's still going. So the person who's being led gets then to invite their leader and gets to see their own energy being taken in, multiplied, amplified, distorted, and given back to them. And that's the new age kind of way of being led. Actually, President Obama is a projector. He has only 2 centers. He has, I think, this one and the root motor. Do you know, Ben?
No.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I think it might be this. It's either this one or this one, and the root motor. That's all he's got. So I just hope he survives his presidency. but it's definitely interesting to watch people get mad at him, to me, because projectors often get really, really, they really incite people. People get very upset at projectors sometimes because they're getting their own energy back, and so there's this whole, like, reflection thing going on with the generators, you know? They can also be, like, the awesomest person ever to a generator. It can go both ways. It can be, like, an angel or devil. Manifestors are just, like, on their own. They're just in their own bubble. Their aura is not inviting. Like, they actually have, like, a closed aura, as opposed to a projector is bringing in other people's energy and going like this all the time, which is why they're supposed to sleep by themselves at night, actually, technically.
Who?
Projectors. They're not supposed to sleep, generators, but we all do end up doing that. And manifestors they do not have sacral energy. They do not have their own energy. So they're not like a generator who has, like, a lot of energy to do work. But they also have a closed aura, so they're not being constantly, like, kind of used energetically in the same way as a projector. So they have, like, a decision that they get to make all the time about whether or not they're letting people into their aura. So sometimes people can be very afraid of manifestors, actually. You ever had this experience? Huh. So interesting, because you look so, you know, like, cute and normal, you know what I mean? Like, but when you start talking about the stuff, if the person is really that chart, they go, you know, because they know this about themselves already. If manifestors don't inform people what they're doing, the people will get very scared, upset, worried, a bunch of other things, because manifestors that's their strategy, is just to tell people what they're going to do. It's not like you got to ask or be invited or respond. It's just you got to tell people what's going on. Because otherwise, we're all sitting here going, what is he doing? What? You know, then it gets confusing, and then we, like, all of our own anxiety goes, or our own emotions, our own, you know, because it's a closed aura. So it's like, I don't know. You know, that's why it's kind of intimidating for others to be, you know, around a manifestor. It can also be very powerful if you're in a relationship with somebody who's not a manifestor. They could be like, yes, if they've got extra power when they're with you, you know, because you can help manifest stuff for them. You actually do make stuff happen by deciding. It's very hard for manifestors, though, usually to know what they want, especially when they're young. So they're not manifesting from a place of, like, being totally sure. So that's like a whole art and learning of how to manifest exactly the way you want to. You're not an emotional manifestor, so you wouldn't be manifesting from a low or a high emotionally. But that's what emotional manifestors do, and that's why that's a really big challenge. Actually, when I was thinking about it as I was driving down the street the other day, for some reason, I was like, I feel sorry for emotional manifestors, you know, because if you were at a high or a low, and then you just decided you wanted something, and then later on you're not at that place anymore, but you've got whatever you decided on, because the manifestor has a really easy time making stuff happen. But a lot of times I get frustrated with I've got a manifestor close to me, where I'm like, so, well, if you want this thing, just decide. You know, just decide, and it'll happen. I know she can manifest. But it's like, sometimes it's not that simple. Like, the other person has to learn what they're doing. You can't just manifest for them all the time, you know? a lot of times manifestors think that they're like really vulnerable and that they're kind of victims in some way, but actually they have like all this power. So it's just knowing the power and feeling the power and using it for good. Because I do know a lot of really awesome manifestors, but I've known a couple, one or two that are really, really scary. Because if they turn kind of to the dark side, you know, then it's like, oh Lord, get out of the way. Just get out of the way. So generators is the next category. There is a subcategory of generators called manifesting generators. They are not manifestors. They usually think that they are. They manifest a little bit because they have the throat center. It's connected to their sacral center. And everybody who has a sacral center, which is the second chakra, so if you look at it's that one right there. Yeah, it's that one. And everybody who has one of those is a generator. If you see any chart, now you can read some charts because you know who's a generator and who's not a generator. So, for fun, let's switch places and let's put the two generators one place and put the manifestor and the projector on the other side just for fun.
Stretch.
At least you can move around then.
Stretch.
We can move chairs back a little bit too. Okay. So, everybody on this side of the room does not have their own energy, traditionally speaking. Now, Ben has a root motor, which is another source of energy. Let me see if you've got one. You do too. Okay. Do you guys have root motors over here?
Where's the root
She
motor?
does. Okay. So we'll deal with root motors later. This is just about the sacral center first. So everybody over here has got a sacral center, which means you are here to do work. You have the energy to do work. The trick is to get out of the bed in the morning and kind of like get it moving. And once you get moving, then you can keep going. And actually, the more you move, the more energy you have. And then you can keep going. The only problem is, of course, you can't like overdo it too many days where you're staying up really late. You know, because sometimes generators get going and then they don't want to stop at a normal time. And that's not a good, healthy, situation. It's good to have some routine as a generator because you have this center that's very much about routine. It's like, here's my, it's sexual energy as well as just energy in the body to do work and not just work, but fun stuff too, When you're using this, it doesn't even turn off and on really. It's really just there or it's not. These guys over here are going to feel totally different about getting up in the morning and going to work than you guys are actually. Even though it seems like, of course, we're all the same on the fundamental level, but these guys don't have the energy necessarily to go through a normal 9-to-5 work day the same way that you guys do. Like, once they start working, they're going to start depleting their energy, and then they're going to have to stop at some point and take a break. Or they'll just be done at some point, like they won't have any left. Oops. So you guys get energy by movement, by exercise, by using that center. Even like sex, for instance, would actually energize you. These guys are going to only have, technically speaking, human design-wise, they only have the energy that's in their root motor. So they have energy to get up and get out of bed and go to work, but it's going to be like, at some point, it's like, turns off. And it's kind of interesting because the root motor is based on the sun, kind of, and we'll talk about that in a second. We'll switch you guys around again. But sacral center means that you have just the ability to carry things forward routinely and keep it going. You know what I mean? Keep stuff going. These guys are not like necessarily the meat and potatoes of the organization. You know what I'm saying? These guys are gonna, like, he's gonna have to make decisions. If you have a organization of some kind, I'm making up a fake workforce now. And he's going to have to be working like on his own as an independent contractor for consulting, kind of. So the projector specializes in certain areas, and they get really specialized in certain areas. So when you guys are like, oh, I really need somebody who understands, like, Well, Ben does computers, but he probably does something even more specialized than that, but whether or not he knows that, I don't know. But let's say you guys need, in your workplace, you need a computer guy, so you call Ben, and then Ben comes over and fixes your computers, and you pay him, and it's like, it's all based on you guys recognizing him as someone who has the knowledge, inviting him and paying him, and then the job is over and he goes home and rests, That's kind of the idea. This guy might be at your workforce with you, but he's not necessarily doing quite as many hours, and he's definitely going to be, in order to be used properly, if we're all used, in some way, he's going to be making some decisions. Now, that doesn't mean that he gets to just go around and tell people what to do in his everyday life, but it means that if he's being used properly in a workforce situation, he would be telling you guys some stuff to do, and you guys would actually feel good about it, to be honest, because I have Manifestor friends that tell me what to do, and I'm super happy about it, okay? And I don't like it when most people tell me what to do. So it's a feeling of oh yes, thank you. I didn't know what to do, and he had the answer to me. It's that kind of feeling. It's not oh God, they're so oppressive, Usually the oppressive bosses that you hate actually are not supposed to be in that position in some way. They're not the right type of that position, There have been manifestors that have gotten too full of themselves, like Raw. But that's really easy to spot, because when a manifestor does that, it's they're closed off to everybody, and you just don't even want to go near them. So that's easy. It's either on or off, with them. Okay. Any questions about type before we go on? All right. I know it's getting late, guys, and keep eating and drinking. It's okay with me. Okay. So root motor. Okay. Let's put. I know this is annoying, but can we put all of the Ben? Can you fit on that side in that chair or something? And then
I can move over.
You can move over here on the couch, and he can move over there, so we have all the root motor people here. Do that.
Okay.
We can always move this table too.
Back to the cheese.
Yes.
These are all root. Is that?
Yeah, these are all root guys. Yeah, you can just sit there. Okay, so root motor people, like me, have a certain energy, an additional energy, that comes from the sun in a certain way. When the sun comes up in the morning, you kind of get a little bit of energy from that. Problem for me is sometimes I want to sleep in. And so sometimes I'm oh, I don't really want to wake up right now, It's twofold, okay? You get energy from your root motor, but it can be on or off. What I find is as soon as the sun goes down, there's a certain amount of it that turns off. And it's just okay. It's not necessarily that I have to go to sleep, but I definitely don't want to be doing intense work or driving around doing crazy errands or something, right? That's a root motor situation. Root motors are also a connection to the earth. So you guys are more grounded in a certain sense than the people would be on this side, which unfortunately is only Brittany right now, but if we had more people in our class, I would show you more people without a root motor. That is a good thing, right? The connection to the earth kind of keeps you feeling centered in a certain way. A lot of people with root motors, I've heard that they've been told they're not grounded, and I'm always that is not correct. That is not correct. What is actually happening maybe is that when you have, if you're a projector with a root motor, for instance, if you have kind of a sensitive system and your root motor turns on, what happens to me is I get really excited sometimes, and so then I look really ungrounded, But it's really just that I've got a lot of energy for a second, and I'm turned on, the root motor's turned on. But when it's turned off, I'm super chill, and it's not an ungrounded thing, actually. It's actually still very connected. There's an energy connection to the earth, and you can feel it, and it's for me, it's been a blessing, actually, as a projector, to have a root motor. Because if you can imagine, I know one guy that I did some processing on that had just this one, and this one, and I know two people like that, actually, and there's no groundedness there, projectors. without anything down here. There's no grounded.
So was that a lot of talking?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. He was speaking his mind. It was just that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of talking, speaking of the mind, but also not being in touch with the body. Because another thing about root motors is being in touch with the body.
Right.
The good thing is we have a feeling of like what our body needs or what it's doing. You know, we don't completely disconnect from our body. You can look at it one way or the other, but the other side of that is we have to get exercise. People with root motor have to exercise. Because it's just there's a physical energy there that needs to be exercised. And if you're a projector, then you have to be a little more, or a manifestor actually, you have to be a little more sensitive with yourself. Like you don't do like tons and tons of aerobics and then decide to do strength training after that and, you know, you're going for 2 hours. I mean, you know, at a certain point, projectors are going to get exhausted when you're done. But it is important, though, to do exercise. And I did used to dance for hours and hours a day, and it is possible. You just have to kind of pace yourself and give yourself breaks and that kind of stuff. On the other side, now this is a more interesting situation if you do not have a root motor, okay? Because in this particular division, people with root motors are the majority of society. Not necessarily, I think it might be 50 percentage-wise, but that wants us to function that way, you know? When the sun's up, we're on, we're going, we have energy, and we're doing stuff. We're all about doing stuff if you've got the root motor. It can be even a little too much sometimes because we can do stuff to the extent where, you know, like if you're a projector and you're not a generator, you're kind of like, but I need to do all these things, but I need to do all these things, and at a certain point it's just, no, you're done today, you know, you're done. So you have to learn how to let go of some of those things.
Obama's got the root and the emotions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I've seen different charts with him before. That's interesting. He's a projector with root and emotions?
Yes.
So the emotions give him the juicy. Okay, so we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So people without the root motor are not supposed to be on someone else's schedule. They're not supposed to be told when to work or when they're supposed to show up to something. If they do, they will get kind of like collapsed and anxious, and then everything's about, you know, what it is expected of them, and it's almost like it's just too much stress for their system, actually. If they are starting a project, they're supposed to just be able to have the project on their own time and rhythm, and they're a little bit floaty sometimes above the people with root motors, you know, and the root motor people will get together with them and go, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? You're just hanging out, Brittany. How come you're sitting on the couch, right? And that is a place where root motor people have to, like, step back and don't, you know, impose our way of being on them. Because she actually does not have the same earth connection, the same energy as we do. So she doesn't have the same drive to do things. If this chart is correct, but I think your other chart didn't have a root motor too. I think this part is right.
Yeah, because I'm very floaty.
Yeah, and it's like really.
I don't like being told what to do.
Yeah, and it's really okay because they will complete things in their own time if they're given the time to do it. But if we try to impose deadlines on them, they are not supposed to have deadlines, and they will like collapse maybe before the deadline even happens because maybe the whole project is just over then, you know, once it's given a deadline. So I have a friend who does not have a root motor. She works on cool creative projects. Whenever I get together with her, I'm like, I wonder what you're doing. Can't we like do that together now? Can't we work on that, you know? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm doing this. This is what it is. And like, okay, so let's do it. Like, let's do it, you know? She's like, nah, we don't have to do it right now. You know? It like just doesn't even occur to her. It's good, now you can see, it's good to have somebody with a root motor and somebody without a root motor sometimes together on things, because sometimes you're going to need people like that to help you to get things done in time for deadlines, right? And sometimes we're going to need people like this who don't really do everything based on deadlines, you know? They do things based on what's up here in their, you know, their cloud, you know? And so that, you know, if we're in a show with you guys, we're like, oh my god, You know, like, are they gonna
That's what
do it? But, and you guys are like, oh my god, I have to come to all of these rehearsals. You know, and it's like super, they'll come probably actually, but they will be stressed out about it though, you know. Whereas we'll be like, oh good, I have to go to this, so I like know that I'm doing this thing and I'm doing this thing. And it's like, once you know you've got a deadline, oh, then I can complete something, right? Because if I don't have a deadline, honestly, it's not going to happen as a projector especially. Like it's not going to happen unless I know it's a deadline. And the way I use this as a projector with a root motor is I just focus on one thing at a time. Like, okay, I'm going to do this thing today, and I'm going to do this other thing tomorrow. I'm going to give myself deadlines that way, instead of it being like, I've got to get 5 things done today, because, you know, it's not going to happen. But if I have a show, performance date, a deadline of some kind, then, man, it might actually happen. It's going to happen, you know? That freaks them out, though. So, okay. So we did this root motor and the sacral motor. Those are the 2 major sources of energy. And those really those are things you can see in people around you at work or anywhere, you know? If they're a generator or if they're not a generator, that's pretty obvious if you're working with them or if you're in a relationship with them. If they have a root motor or not, that's a little less obvious, but it comes in there, it comes into play when you're working, you know? It does. And I would say they're the 2 most obvious things to me. Because as a root motor person, I'm like, okay, now I'm doing this thing, you know, here I am. And the non-root motor people are like, whoa, you're doing a thing, you know? It's like, chill out, man. Like, so the next center up. So there's a couple different centers when you go up from there. When you get to intuition or emotions. Okay, let's do emotions first, since that's such a big one, and I've given you a little sheet about it too. So everybody with emotions, actually, you guys are all emotional over here, right? So you stay over there, and Brittany and I will sit here, because we're the non-emotional people.
Where's the emotion at, usually?
It is here.
Okay, no.
So, no, I know you don't have that. We've talked about that a lot. So the thing is, if you have emotions, you definitely need to go to this sheet. Now, all of us do need to go to it, but the one that I gave you that has the emotional labels, these are mostly all bad emotions, but the important thing is to know that I use this to help people heal bad emotions by helping them to first label them. You have to know what you're feeling in order to heal anything. And, interestingly enough, the people on that side are always having a feeling at every moment. You guys are connected to the moon, and so you have a certain amount of emotional juice that's being pumped into you all the time. And the cool thing about that is, if you write a piano piece, or you do some kind of artwork, right? Us on this side of the couch, we're gonna go, whoa, look at that art, man, it's so cool, you know? Because they can make art that's so juicy, and like you really feel it, you know? And if we go to make art, it's not that we don't have any emotions, but it's gonna come across a little bit more dry sometimes, you know? It depends on like how we're dealing with stuff, but like I'm very based in emotions, and I've done a lot of emotional dances before and stuff, but if you talk to people who were dancing with me, they would probably not call me, you know, a super emotional person, because I don't do things based on my emotion at all, ever. Like, if I'm supposed to show up somewhere, I'm going to show up there no matter if I'm in a bad mood or a great mood or something horrible happened to me or not, you know. For you guys, as an emotional being, you go through a high and a middle and a low all the time. And actually, the moon goes through a different sign every 3 days. So you, in a 3-day period, go through all of the emotional cycle, all the places on the emotional cycle. You know what, though, I might have to mislabeled you. Let me look at you.
I don't think he's got emotion.
I don't think he's supposed to be here. You need to come over here, man. You need to come over here.
so.
Go join Brittany. Ignore everything you just heard about yourself.
I'm so sorry. That part I should have looked, because I think I saw your intuition and thought it was, because they're both on either side, you know.
Oh yeah, you don't have it.
I was like, wait a second, this dude does not feel emotional to me. Okay, so if you're empty emotionally, then you are feeling everyone else's feelings, okay? And it's not that you don't have your own feelings. It's just that all of your, everybody's got issues in their mind and their emotions, okay? Everybody, whether you're emotional or not, you've got like little, like, you call it like a spider web in your mental and emotional body as a person who's lived on Earth. Because just being on Earth means that you're connected to everyone else here, and there are a bunch of collective beliefs that do not work at all, and there's a bunch of emotional baggage that nobody's feeling. In fact, we are the most emotionally repressed, I think, that is almost possible. So, as people on this side of the room, you are feeling all of the emotions that are getting repressed, okay? It's not that they're not, but you guys are hooked up to the moon, so you're getting an emotion at any moment. It's like an IV, And for you guys, it's the most healing thing to think now to yourself at every moment. I'm feeling a feeling right now. What is it? What is the feeling I feel? And that's why I tell you guys to journal as much as you can about what feelings you felt at what time. I did this, then I felt this feeling. It doesn't mean that it's about the thing, right? It's not about the thing, actually. You would feel the feeling no matter what you were doing. That's the cool thing, and what happens for you guys then is you get to separate the story from the feeling, And you just see how the feelings just come, and they're just there. And yes, things happen that trigger them, because things happen that trigger our feelings too, right? That's a universal human thing. But if you could imagine, like, what if I was going to feel that feeling kind of anyway at this time of the day because I'm hooked up to the moon, and the moon's in this particular part of Cancer or whatever, and so I was going to feel sad, let's say, and then this thing happened that really triggered all my sadness, okay? And it's just interesting to think about that. So I tell people to journal and admit their feelings and admit what they are feeling to the people on this side of the room. Because the people on this side of the room do not have their own emotions. They have issues. They have like emotional contraction places, and they have the ability to feel universal emotions. They're empty, so they're just open to all emotion, and open to all, you can be open to all joy, right? Or you can be open to all, it has to do with your own issues, but it's not as cyclical. It's not like this calendar issue, like with the moon. We're not hooked up to the moon the same way, so it's just kind of like based on what needs to happen for us in our lives, Whether we get triggered with something, it's like, oh, well, that's because I need to get over this issue about this thing, and I need to kind of expand bigger than that, and, But a lot of things for us are about opening up bigger to contain all the emotion that's coming in, because it's coming in from the universal everything, But it's an emptiness that's just holding all emotion, and that's why these guys will often tell us over here that we're the emotional one. That's what's so interesting about human design. Is these guys will say, you guys are so emotional, because we look really chaotically emotional sometimes, because we don't have our own energy in that place. So we don't have like something that kind of juices us up or grounds us or gives us energy in that emotional place. So these guys can actually use their emotional motor as an energy center if they want to, by not doing things when they feel low and doing things when they feel happy. Like, you can use the energy you get from feeling happy and good to get stuff done or whatever, especially as a projector, and then when you get kind of low, then maybe you just sit around and feel your feelings for a little while, because it's probably going to make all the things you try to do kind of not as good anyway when you feel bad. These guys can just live their life in a more routine way, It's like, I got to do this thing, so I do this thing today. It's not dependent on emotion at all. But for these guys to be okay, these guys have to admit what feeling you're feeling. If you can stop the repression in society by starting with yourselves to admit what you're feeling, then these guys are like, oh, no wonder, because as soon as I went into the room with you, I was feeling a little bit nervous, and I didn't know why, And I thought maybe it was me. But what happens is, it's vibes we're getting, and then we're kind of like blaming ourselves for it a lot of the time, actually. Or we're getting confused, or we get like mad at you guys because we're like, I don't know what's going on, I'm just gonna leave, you know? So, so that's the thing, is technically we are empaths over here, okay? So all the stuff that you read about empaths applies, actually. But it doesn't mean that all of this other stuff that we're talking about, your chart, doesn't also come into play with it, you know? It just means that emotionally speaking, you guys need to be as open as you can to these guys, to everybody. You need to be as open as you can about what the feeling it is that you're feeling, because it's not actually yours probably, or it's more than just yours. And if you are having a feeling about something, and let's say you did a piece of art, that would be really healing in a certain way. This kind of emotional juice is like addictive. Like, these guys will actually love to be around this emotional juice because it's like passion, you know? But if we do art with our lack of emotional definition, then it has this healing thing, actually. Because it's like we're feeling everybody's feelings and we're kind of showing that, you know? So it's kind of a healing situation. Okay.
Question quick.
Yeah.
You said we take on people? Their
We take-
emotions?
We feel everybody's feelings.
Makes
Yes.
sense.
So if you are with people, you will feel their feelings.
That happened to me earlier, which is weird.
Yeah. Well,
I
yeah.
was, yeah,
Today.
like my
Right
apartment.
before he came.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, like full on. It was weird.
Yeah, please get food and drink, guys. So yeah, and the thing that's interesting is too, like, these guys are not vulnerable in that area in the same way that we are. So like emotional stuff can be like life or death to us, kind of, you know, because it's so dramatic because we don't have our own strength in that area. Whereas for you guys, emotional stuff is kind of just like, well, this is how it always goes. I mean, it's like I'm at a low and then I'm here and then I'm at a high, and it's always been that way. You know, I've always been on that cycle. And in fact, a lot of people with emotional motors will find ways of, you know, meditating or finding some peace within the center of the emotional cycle, kind of, where it's like, you know, they're not being controlled by their emotions so much. But I think an even more enlightened way, actually, is to use that emotional juice for whatever you're doing. Like, use it and admit it and show it openly, actually, because it will be healing that way too. But you guys are, like, you guys just have that IV thing, and you guys are, like, vulnerable to the emotions of people you're around, people in your family, okay, so even if you're not around them, people in your country, people in your space, people in your, you know what I mean? The group consciousness of the groups that you're a part of, that emotional stuff affects you. So that's why, and especially if you're a projector or manifestor, you're not emotional, you have to really be a little selective about what groups you go into, because you're going to take on a lot of the, you know, if you're a projector, you'll take on a lot of the energy. If you're a manifestor, you will take on a lot of the emotion, at least, if not some of the other stuff too. It's a little more vulnerable, but manifestors, like I said, also have that power, so they can't like think of themselves as super vulnerable all the time, because they need to realize how powerful they are too, you know. Okay, intuition. Intuition is the next one over. This one does not say that she has it.
Wait.
He does.
This one?
He does. And you do.
Is it done?
So,
Intuition.
let's put Landon
Yes.
back over here, I think, for a second. So I would not be here, actually. You would be the only one by yourself in this one.
Which is really weird because I remember you telling me I have.
Well,
No,
your
said
other
I have
chart.
gut. You said I have gut.
Oh, but your other chart. Okay. Maybe this is the right chart. I don't know.
Is this gut? Where's gut? Right here?
That's the
Okay,
sacral.
so
The red one.
This is gut then?
Oh.
Okay.
So intuition is also called the spleen in human design. It is the immune system as well as the intuition. It is a place you guys have strength, so you would have like more white blood cells maybe. I mean, it's that physical, you know, but it's also about really going to that neutral space where there's no emotion and there's no thought, and feeling what direction to go in, feeling what you're supposed to do, especially you because it's your authority, right? These guys are emotional authority, so they have intuition that they can use, but it's kind of like a bonus. It's not the way that they make decisions. It's the way you make decisions, so it's really important for you to understand. If you do not have intuition, then you do not have the immune system in a certain way. So then you would not have some of the, like, you might have allergies, and these guys would be less likely to have allergies, actually, because we have an immune system that's kind of set up to do, it's a strong immune system. Now, the only thing that I think is interesting is I have an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's, right? And that I've had a very good immune system for most of my life, but when you have an autoimmune disease, the immune system turns against itself. And then, if you have a really good immune system, you have a formidable opponent because it's actually fighting yourself. And then you've got to resolve whatever conflict there is there. So I've been resolving that conflict because it's a conflict within yourself. And it's all about fighting yourself, because otherwise you have a great immune system and you're not sick, If you don't have the immune system, then you have more vulnerability actually to being sick. So you have to be more careful. You can't eat certain foods. You can't even have like certain fabrics, maybe, Like you have to be more like sensitive to what you put around your body as far as whether or not you're going to get sick or have allergies or something. If you have the immune system, you need to feel which way to go and just make your decisions more like using some of that information, just really feel into that feminine place but it's not a place of emotion and it's not a place of thoughts actually. It's something that you could feel without having any thought. If you don't have the immune system or the intuition, then you're not supposed to make decisions intuitively. So being around these guys, being around people with intuition is really helpful because it's like then you get to use that. So whenever you're with somebody who has a center that you don't have, you get to use some of that, You guys balance each other out. So if you don't have the intuition, it's harder to come to the place of faith and trust in certain things, especially stuff you can't see or that you don't know about. Like, for instance, my sister does not have the immune system or the intuition. So she had allergies when she was growing up, and I didn't. Also, she's much more based on science, usually. She has a harder time having faith in stuff that she can't understand logically. Now, some people might have learned to overcome that, because Brittany is not somebody that I would think of as having trouble going past science.
I've had to overcome that.
But she probably had more. Yeah, if this is your true chart, then that's how far you've come is all. And a lot of people who don't have the intuition are like way lagging behind you, because eventually we all have to come to a place of trust in stuff we can't see, and stuff we can't necessarily like feel physically, like the unity that we're a part of, like that kind of thing, We have to be able to feel that in some way that's not like this is A, B, C, D, here's a book and read it. Like, that's the problem with not having the intuition, is that it can be very like, but this is what I see in front of me, But you are open to the universal intuition, though. So you have the ability to use intuition or to hear messages from your guides or whatever, but it's more of like a place where you have to kind of... This is actually an interesting subject that I've never thought of before, but people who don't have intuition have a harder time with, like, let's talk about esoteric presences a little bit, like ghosts, guides, people on the other side, like showing up. People who don't have the intuition, it can actually exhaust you to deal with that, too much of that. So, like, I have my owner at the spa is a healer, and she's an awesome healer. She can see stuff, right? I mean, she can clearly see stuff, and feel stuff. So it's not that you can't see or feel stuff, but it's like, it feels like it exhausts her almost to have too much of it, to me. Whereas for us, it's like, no, there's a really good thing for us about going more and more into what it is we can't see on the outside, you know? Like really feeling into things and going based on that, you know, into our own kind of world. There's a good thing there for us. For you guys, it's like, it's easier. There's a vulnerability there, so it's easier to kind of base things on what you can see and to be like kind of simple about stuff and not be too like, woo, you know, and then I saw auras.
Not overthink it.
Right, like not like get too, because I've known a lot of people who didn't have intuition who saw all sorts of things and got all sorts of messages, but it felt to me like it exhausted them
It does
eventually.
It is very exhausting. I can only do so much before.
So that's why, that's why you gotta hire some, like, that's why if you've got a ghost in your house, you hire me or something because it doesn't exhaust me, you know what I mean? It's like fun and like no big deal for me, you know? So, okay. So intuition is a great subject because if you're intuitive authority, that's a whole way of learning how to make decisions in a different way that you maybe have not been doing because society did not create people. Society did not make us think that it was okay to have intuition even, or to follow our intuition, or to even acknowledge that that existed, because it's a feminine kind of part of the world. So we do have to start using our intuition, especially intuitive authority. And it's hard at first because you have to go against all of society, kind of, you know? It's like, society's like, well, but this is the you know, A, B, C, these are the thoughts in my head, though, and this is how they logically flow. And you're like, but sometimes things are not logical. So, next center. Yeah? And that's why Brittany should be patting herself in the back, I think, for if you don't have an intuition and you've learned, like, that logic does not always rule, you know? Okay. So, ego, I think, is next. And your manifestors often manifestors have ego. And I might be the only one besides me, because you don't. So, why don't, let's have let's have Brittany just go over and sit in that little chair there. Can you do that? And Landon and I will sit over here.
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
Okay. So, ego center people are not necessarily egotistical, but those people might think we are. It's not necessarily true, but it can be true, okay? Because we are supposed to put our name on stuff and we're supposed to put our picture on stuff. If you don't have the ego center, you are not supposed to put your name on stuff and you're not supposed to put your picture on stuff, and it feels egotistical for you to do that, you know? And if you do it and it feels wrong, that's why, you know? If you take credit for things, like onto your individual self, there's a weakness there, a vulnerability there that's like, oh, I can't handle it, you know? It's like better to give credit to the organization or the principle of the thing or the process of the technique that you learned or whatever it is. It's better to give credit to those things because otherwise you either get a big head or you collapse under the weight of the lack of ego strength. It's like kind of goes one way or the other. It's extreme. Like there are some people that don't have ego centers that write books and they go, this book is all about me, you know, and it's me, and then everybody kind of reads it and is like, that is not, there's something wrong there, you know? And that's one direction it can go in. The other direction is like, I've got a musician friend who has every single center, I think, except for the ego center. You can see how that is a challenge for a musician. You're not supposed to take credit then, individually. So he's always kind of like handing ego stuff, he's always handing credit off, you know, to somebody else. And that's good because he doesn't have the strength in that area to take it on his individual self. But it's also like he can get really like brushed over and unrecognized. So that's the other side of it. And that's like something that has to be kind of like surrendered to in a certain way for you guys, but also find a good organization, find good people to be with, find good, you know what I mean? So that they will give you credit in a way that's appropriate for you, that feels good, that's not ballooning to the head and also not like completely like you don't exist or something. You know what I'm saying? These guys over here, we're supposed to have our own businesses. We're supposed to work for ourselves. I always go, when I tell people that, like, I wonder if I'm supposed to tell people this, but, because then, you know, a lot of people take this really seriously and they go and, like, create their own business right away. But we have a certain strength of willpower, and it can seem kind of annoying to some people, or it can seem, like, kind of weird and mysterious, like, how come they have that ability to do that? It's basically just, like, not a choice in some ways, because when we work for other people, we have a really hard time with authority, and also they have a really hard time with us. Like, they want to be in charge, but there's a certain authority that we have by having an ego center, and then so some people want to look up to us as an authority, and that you can see how that can be a conflict with whoever's actually the authority. And then the other thing is that the authority figure will sometimes like pin stuff on us because of that kind of dynamic. They'll kind of like blame us for stuff on purpose. It's really interesting, actually. All the people I've talked to with ego centers have had stuff blamed on them for most of the time that they did work as part of an organization. Now, if they do work in a smaller situation, smaller setting, or by themselves, that doesn't happen the same way. You know, it's a lot more like they're supposed to be kind of individual, like, what do you call it, maverick, you know, like, on their own, like, here's the picture, here's the thing, hire them to do something, you know? And it works for me because then what ends up happening is, as a projector, then I don't take on the entire energy of the whole organization. I just get hired for a certain thing, you know, and then I'm gone. So I'm only taking in somebody's energy for a certain amount of time, and there's a break. It's also hard to have your own business, but but it's something that we can deal with as far as it feels right to us, and we can take it on. You know, we have the strength to make it happen. And it might take a while, like you have to keep going and keep going and keep going, and you will. If you have this ego center, you will. It's like you have the willpower to just keep doing whatever it is you want to do until it finally makes an impact and is successful, you know. But a lot of times we have low self-esteem in a certain way, which negatively impacts our success.
That's what the ego center energized.
Yeah, definition.
Low self-esteem.
Sometimes, yeah.
Wow.
Well, the reason why, let me be like more clear about it. We will blame ourselves for things, just like other people blame ourselves for things. It's one of those things, right? Like the way that you treat yourself is the way other people treat you. The way other people treat you is the way you treat yourself. You know, there's a whole cycle there, right? You guys, there's not as much. Sometimes you guys will try to get away with things in certain situations, you know, but that it's not a big deal. It's like learning that particular lesson about being for the greater good, and if you can learn that this lifetime, then you're good, you know. We may have already learned the thing about for the greater good, which is why we're supposed to be in charge of people, and when we are put in charge of groups, we will automatically make decisions based on the group, not on our individual self. Which actually can be a problem for us sometimes, because we would actually make a decision not like that goes against what we really need. Like I've been in charge of groups before and been like, well, this is what we need to do as a group, and then I'll like go home and realize that I just sentenced myself to like a whole bunch of work that I didn't know if I could really do, you know? You guys there's some good things about the fact that you have your own individual self in mind. You know, a little bit more than we do over here sometimes. So we're like the people that will be like for the cause, you know? You guys will be like, yeah, but how much money can I make, you know? It's good, though. It's good, you know? You can see how they have to go together also. You gotta have both, you know? And if you're working with people like this, then they might know what it is you're supposed to do. You might know how to get the money, you know? It's like we might be able to work together here. Okay, so that we will often look like sometimes I've heard all sorts of different things about ego center people. I've heard they look really guilty and like they don't really like themselves, or I've heard that they looked really puffed up, egotistical, like some guy, somebody's dad. Now she did not have an ego center who said this too. Okay, so there's a whole dynamic there, right? Her dad had an ego center. He named some park after himself because he created something. I don't know what it was, and she said he was always trying to get credit for it. And I thought about that, and I was like, this is interesting, because it's definitely from the perspective of the person without the ego center, you know? So deciphering it is an interesting situation, but we can look very egotistical to you guys. And on this side, we can't use our willpower just to, like, make anything happen, right? Because that can be, like, borderline evil, or it can exhaust us. It can do some bad things sometimes. Just because you have willpower doesn't mean you should just use that as an energy motor, you know? So, because we will be like, for the cause, we will make it happen, you know, Braveheart, like. And then it's like, okay, man, you know, you just got yourself killed. Does that really work? We're often the martyr who got themselves burned at the stake or killed for something, you know? Okay, so, that's kind of like for instance, for that woman, for her dad, I mean, it's good that he got credit in that sense. According to human design, he's supposed to have gotten credit for what he did. But whether or not he was puffed up about it, we don't really know. You know, it's like we don't really know exactly what happened there. But we know that there's always that dynamic between people. Okay, next center, G center. So, Brittany has a G center. Wait, no, that's you. Okay.
No, wait.
You have a G center, Brittany does. I don't. You
This one?
do.
Which one's
You
the
don't.
I don't.
So it's just me and Ben that don't. So we can either, let's put all the people with the G centers over there if you guys want to squeeze together.
Okay.
I feel like if we don't make everybody move around a lot, then we have
Yes,
to
my body just thank you for that, because that was stiff.
Oh, I'd rather move around than sit, honestly.
Go,
We
Straight.
have to leave in a half an hour.
oh yeah, down that hallway. And then,
This one? It's the
so go that way,
diamond
and then
thing
go
there.
to
This
the
one right
left, and it'll be the first
Yeah.
order.
Okay,
Like,
we're gonna
Did
go
she
over
go
that
over
right
this
now. That's what we're going over right now.
if you guys need,
We haven't done that yet, no.
No.
Okay,
I'm so sorry, Hillary.
that's okay. So G center. All right. G center is not how it sounds. It sounds like a nasty kind of thing. Yeah. It's actually about your heart. It's about, I like to call it the heart actually sometimes, because some people call the ego the heart, and I don't feel that the ego's the heart. I feel the ego's like the willpower, you know. The G center is like the heart. It's where are you supposed to go? What are you supposed to do? Who are you supposed to follow? What are you supposed to be doing, and with who? That stuff is in your heart. You know how people say follow your heart? That's you guys are talking about. You guys have to follow your heart. Because you deep down, inside somewhere, know what it is you're supposed to do. Who you're supposed to be with. What you're supposed to be doing. That's why you have, this is a slightly different thing than intuition, but you can follow this kind of like intuition. Because you follow the heart feeling instead of the neutral feeling that we were talking about before. This is like what makes you happy, you know, kind of feeling. Like you walk into a room, you like it, or you don't like it, you know. The G center has this special magic to it, kind of, that other people without a G center really like to be around you guys, okay? Because the G center is like a straight, I always said this before, but it's like if you listen to Indian music, there's a lot of different bagpipes actually too in Scottish music. A lot of different kind of cultures of music have this, where you have like a drone underneath and then a melody on top. And the G center, the heart center, is like the drone. It's like this straightforward, moving, linear heart vibe, and other people can kind of like catch it and like surf on it with you if you've got it, you know. And it points you in the direction, you know. It gets everybody going in one way. It makes any relationship you're in, if that person does not have a G center, they're going to be on your G center, kind of. Like, they're going to be going in the direction you're going in. Because people without the G center, we're the ones that don't know what we're supposed to do, or where we're supposed to go or who we're supposed to be with, and sometimes we're really angsty about it. We're like, I don't know, we're like the ones that are confused all the time, and we are often so confused that we'll go on a spiritual searching journey, and we'll end up eventually being a spiritual teacher because we will find that you have to get your love from the great one, God, or whatever you want to call it, instead of trying to get it from one person all the time. That's what we learn eventually. But until we get to that point, we're kind of like a little bit dramatic, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, So you guys are the ones that can help us in that sense. But it's really personal, it's like you guys know what you're supposed to be doing. And it's not necessarily that you know what they're supposed to be doing, but if you're in like a really intimate relationship with them, then they can come along with you, And if you're in your heart and you're using that vibe, then everybody's gonna like you. I mean, it's like what the most attractive thing, If you're not, if it's closed off, like sometimes when you've got a center or definition thing, something happened to you that was traumatic, or you had some kind of issue about it, and you closed off that whole thing. You can close off some of your, like your root motor, like you can like turn it off sometimes, right? That's usually because there's a major issue or a major trauma or something, but because you have your own definition, your own energy there's kind of a narrowness about it, People who have no definition, people who have like one or two centers, they're very open. So sometimes what will happen is they'll become really, really rigid because they're so open that they can't deal with it, so they just like find ways of putting walls around themselves, People who have tons of definition might not be like so worried about that, but they also might not be very vulnerable in a certain way, so they don't understand other people's weakness, So like, my sister has a lot of definition. She'll just be like the strong one who can do everything, and she'll just kind of like get you out of the way so she can do it, because it's like she does not understand not like being sensitive or having vulnerability, So that's the thing for people with lots of centers, is to understand that they have to be a little bit like, what would it be like to be that person though, Person with no center, the person who's very open needs to kind of like be constantly like nurturing themselves and like taking themselves home and giving themselves a warm bath, you know what I mean? Like, okay, but hopefully not closing off to people. Like, hopefully not, like, just deciding that, like, that's it, screw it all, Because that's the rigid thing, and we're built to be really open. If we're really open, then we're built to be that way, so we have to be open people, If you have tons of centers and you're supposed to get something done, and you probably have a specific thing you're supposed to get done this lifetime. And it's like, there's a lot of energy to get that thing done. And if you don't do it, it'll get frustrating. We didn't talk about not selves. We'll talk about them in a second. Okay, so your neck center, that's the G center. That was pretty simple, actually. We get the G center right. Throat center. Who's got the throat? 1, 2. So, Brittany, come over here.
I'm doing a lot of shifting tonight.
You did. So this one's pretty simple. It's kind of funny. These are the people who don't have their own throat center, so of course they're the ones who are talking all the time. These are the people who have their own throat energy, so they are not talking enough. Okay, so what happens is, because we don't have our own energy in that center, we're kind of like, ooh, like spinning a little bit, and we're like talking, and then we have to kind of like calm ourselves down sometimes and just like not exhaust our throat center. Like, speaking can actually exhaust the crap out of us. So, like for instance, I teach a class, but then I'm silent beforehand and I'm silent afterwards, because it's just too much, like, because it will actually make you tired, When you have the throat center, you are supposed to be using your voice. You have your own individual voice. When we talk, we're talking for the collective. We're talking for, like, everybody, When you guys talk, you're talking for yourself, individually, uniquely. You have a unique voice, and you have to write, you have to talk, you have to do expressive things with your throat center. In fact, making art or doing things that are, like, expressive, that give that voice to the world, you know? Like Barbara Streisand isn't a projector, she has throat to heart, that's it. I think she just has G center to throat.
How does that work out?
Well, she's a self-projected projector, I think. It's an authority.
Oh my
thing. We won't go. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. That's an authority thing. If you're a beginner, don't worry about it. Okay. All right. So that's basically the throat center. It's that simple. You can get more in depth with it. Usually, people who have the throat center are either manifesting generators or manifestors, because in order to manifest, you have to speak it out or write it down. So when you make a decision about something, you got to use that. We do have people like projectors or generators that also have throat centers. It's just a secondary power for you, kind of. It's not like your main gig, but you got to use that voice still. And that's really helpful to know, because if you aren't using your voice, then it's closed off, you know, and it starts to be frustrating. It starts to be not healthy, actually. Whereas us using our voice too much is usually the problem for on the side, right? But if we are in a group, we will be the one who speaks for the group. So, you know how you're in a group and you're feeling, especially if you don't have the emotional, you're feeling everybody getting really angry about something and nobody's saying anything, and we're the ones who says it usually, because we can't handle the tension. Like, we need to like let it out, because it's like coming in here, you know, and it's going out, you know. So it's like we feel everybody's voice. The mind. Who has the mind? You have the mind. You do not have the mind. You have the mind. Okay, so Karen and Brittany can switch.
Is this the thoughts?
Yes.
See, I didn't have thoughts on. I didn't have thoughts.
I didn't think so, but you know what? It doesn't.
I'm feeling like it was like 10 something you told me last time.
It could be. Let's just do it this way, because
That's fine.
let's see if any of it.
No, that's
You'll
fine.
kind of know after this what
I'll
feels
check it out
right and what
later.
doesn't feel right
I'll
to you.
check it out later.
Yeah.
When she
Yeah,
gives me
because
the
when I
right
get
time.
home, I can.
Yeah, when she gets home, I'll have her.
But also, you know, maybe we were
No,
wrong
that's-
before and I was right. I don't
no,
know.
we'll find out, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you
I'm
have,
taking it all in.
yeah, if you have, and you this way you can look at everybody else's charts too, right? So if you have the mental center, you have your own mind energy, which means you're supposed to use your mind in your career. You need to use your mind for constructive things, to solve problems, to get work done. Do not use it to deconstruct everyone around you. It is easy if you have the mind center to like look at a person and see everything that's wrong, because it's like, you know, like taking apart a puzzle. Like the mind deconstructs and breaks down everything. And for us over here without the mind center, we are extremely vulnerable to you guys, in the sense that even though like maybe you don't have the emotions, so we're not feeling your feelings, but we're getting your thoughts. And if we're getting your thoughts, then first of all, we're open to collective thoughts. We're open to collective beliefs. So everything that society thinks is affecting us. And that sucks. Because the things that we have been raised as a society to think are not healthy. So if you have your own mind, though, you have a certain ability to like critically analyze, okay, and break stuff down. And that is like, you know, you got a quick mind. It doesn't mean that everybody over here is not smart. It doesn't mean that. It just means that we don't have our own energy in that center, so we're not supposed to be using it in our career this lifetime the same way. It's like, when I teach this, it's a cerebral subject, but I'm just kind of using like really basic concepts. I like to teach people who don't know anything yet. It's not like I'm trying to like deconstruct little tiny specific angles of everything, because if I did that, I would be exhausting my mind eventually. We can be very smart actually on this side, because we're open to the collective mind, and we're not so judgmental, actually, is what it breaks down to. Because if you have a mind center, you're going to be able to judge. Okay, the mind judges. That's not even a judgment to say that. It's just what the mind does. In human design, the mind is not an authority. So you are not supposed to think that what goes on in your mind is truth. Now, that's hard for both sides here, okay? We think that what other people think is truth. And that is so not true. And you guys think that what you think is truth. And that is not true either, because it's just not about thinking, okay? That's why nobody's authority in human design is the mind. Whatever your authority is, it's your intuition, it's your gut, it's your emotions. When it's your emotions, you have to wait through the emotional cycle and know that it's a really good decision no matter what feeling you're feeling. But it's not ever, we don't make decisions from up here actually in human design. It's not like we can't find the truth from just like thinking, you know? So that's the thing. Actually, a lot of the people with the Mind Center figured that out really fast because they figure out from deconstructing everything for so long that they end up like, okay, you know, they know after a pretty short amount of time, you know, by the time they're 20 years, they know that it's like, this is not truth though. Like, you gotta feel it for it to be truth, you know? So, the only thing about mind is that you guys can hurt us, you know, if you have mind. Because you can, like, really, like, critically analyze, like, our whole being over here. That's what it feels like to us. It's like, but that's my soul, you know? But you guys are just like, that's not what I meant. I was just talking about this thing that you do, you know, whatever. And you can really deconstruct it, but you have to be sensitive emotionally about what the mind is doing, you know. Use that power for good. Use that mind power for constructiveness instead of destructiveness. People with a mind often know that they need to do some kind of centering technique or meditation or something to stop the mind from working, because you got to get past all the thoughts, because the thoughts are just like, you're in a cycle of thoughts. It just goes in a circle, and it gets like maddening after a while. It's not that we don't have that, but we actually have the ability to just have periods of time without thought, you know, and it gets more the more evolved you get spiritually too, but it's kind of like not a big deal to us, you know, like, oh yeah, you can have just a moment of, you know, you're not thinking. It's okay. Okay. The last one, the spiritual chakra. That would be Brittany there, and I think she's the only one. Let me see. Oh, you have it. No, you don't have it. You don't have it. I don't have it. You don't have it. Okay, so Landon, come on over here. I'm gonna try this for you. You're the only one who has it.
Oh,
So we're gonna use you as the. Hey, you've been special a couple times
I have
tonight.
a lot of specials. All kinds of specials.
Spiritual chakra means that perhaps you had a bunch of lifetimes doing spiritual things. Who knows? You may have even been enlightened in a past life. The important thing is you have a lot of spiritual energy that you're bringing into your body this lifetime, and you need to ground it. You kind of need to like bring it down into practical activity. And for instance, you'd be using it in your career probably. So even when you're doing hair, you're working on their crown chakra.
Which is Galen was talking to me a little bit.
Yeah. And so you'd be practically bringing some of your spiritual energy into their crown chakra probably. So there's no mistake about what people with this one do with their career. You know what I mean? It's never a mistake. Like, got another friend who has this, who is working on sustainable energy and city planning in a sustainable, like, organic kind of way that makes people feel good energetically instead of, you know, the way that we've been doing stuff. If you're open here, it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you can't get enlightened. It doesn't mean that you're not spiritual. It just means that you're open, you're vulnerable there. These guys on this side also have pressure to kind of like, it's inspiration, but it's also pressure almost to do, almost like the root motor is. It's a different kind of pressure. It's like pressure from God downwards, kind of, you know? Whereas we've got pressure from the earth up for the root motor. So it's interesting because if you've got somebody who's got a root motor and a seventh chakra, they are really, they're like a pressure cooker, you know? So they're kind of freaking out sometimes. If you just have one of them, then what I found is that, you know, if I'm with somebody who doesn't have a root motor but they have one of these, it's like we're still working, like we're going, you know what I mean? If I'm with somebody without a root motor, because I have a root motor, but I don't have one of these, and they don't have one of these, I'm carrying them because I'm the one who's doing, and they're kind of like, I don't know, I don't have to do, you know. But if you got one of these, it's like, no, you want to do something. You got to bring that energy down, you know. So that's a similarity to the root motor that the spiritual chakra has, interestingly enough, right? The two ends. Okay, let's talk about authority and strategy. We talked about strategy first. We talked about projectors need to be invited. Manifestors need to inform. Manifesting generators and generators need to respond. It's very simple. So you guys are both generators. You just have to respond to your environment. It's very simple. It's easy, but it's not an initiation. Like, he's supposed to initiate what he wants to happen in his life. That is how society raised all of us to think that we were supposed to be, except for it's only like 7 to 9% of the population that's supposed to be that way. The rest of us are either supposed to be invited by you guys, or you're just supposed to respond to the need of the society or the need of the environment. So you need a job, you go to the job postings and you look at the jobs and then you respond to an ad, you know. You don't like create a job for yourself like the Manifestor does. Okay? We have to wait for some person to actually come over and invite us to work with them. And that is a really annoying process because it feels like it could take forever for us. But it's okay, because if we see a job listing, we respond, if we go over to the place, you know, we introduce ourselves to the person, then part of it has happened. We just need the person now to personally invite us to come there. You know, it's a little bit more in depth than to respond. That's mostly strategies. Reflectors have a strategy of like waiting through a moon cycle or something. I would not want to do. That their whole life is about being. It's not about doing, you know. Authority. We got 2 intuitive authorities, 2 emotional authorities, and 1 sacral authority. Intuitive authority is about feeling which is the right direction I'm supposed to go in. What is the job I'm supposed to have? Intuitive authority people, this sounds really cheesy, but I kind of think that we should all have like some oracle or tarot cards, because we need to start using our intuition like all the time. And at first it's like, what? I don't even know how to use that. You know, you have to practice and really, really practice trusting yourself. Trusting yourself. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. First thing that comes to your mind. That's the answer. You know, it's an authority that's only in the now. It's only right now that it's true. You know, it's not true. That's why if you do get oracle cards, you draw a card and it's like, that's what's true right now about the thing that you asked about. It's not like, well, 48 days ago I drew a card that said this. You know, it's not, you shouldn't bring it that far. If you're in the grocery store, you go into the grocery store and you kind of like feel which direction you're supposed to go, what food you're supposed to put in the cart, you know? You feel it and you kind of move in that direction. It's not very concrete all the time, but the more you use it, the more very accurate it gets. You just go with the first response. It's like the first response could be anything, right? It's not just yes or no. Sacral authority people, your response is always yes or no. If you can do something or not, yes or no. You're just, okay, so like let's say you guys go to the grocery store, there's a ton of different foods though, so how are you going to make that decision? You have to go to each aisle and go yes or no, you know. It's not like you have to do that with every food, but you get the idea of what I'm saying, because it's like an intuition, it's a gut authority. Actually, this is just Brittany, right? I'm looking at both of you, but this is just Brittany we're talking about. It's a gut authority that feels like intuition, but it's very simple. It's just yes or no. You don't have to like do a whole like, well, but the pink elephant in the corner, you know. It's like, you just have to feel if bananas are good for you or not, you know.
Yeah.
Ben and Karen have emotional authority, and so they have to use the feelings, the emotions, to kind of like reach out and feel what it is they want. But it has to be able to go through a 3-day cycle to know for sure that that was the right decision. So going to the grocery store for you guys could be hard, right? Because if you're on an emotional high, you could be like, but I really want that, you know, and then 3 days later you're like, that was a really bad decision, why did I get that, you know? So it's a good idea for you guys to start trying to do things in a kind of planned way, maybe like make the grocery list the day before you go to the grocery store, that kind of thing, so that once you get there, you still got to use those emotions. You got to use those emotions to feel out where you're supposed to go, but you want to not be completely blinded by them too. Like, because if you're on a low or you're on a high, it's going to be completely different than the other side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it, like, relationships, obviously, you know, we're all emotional about relationships, but for you guys, it's especially important. You can't make decisions based on the emotional high or the emotional low. You can use that juice to kind of, like, fuel yourself and fuel the other person, but you can't, like, say, this is how this whole relationship is. You can't really ever say that, because just right now in this moment it's like this, and then it's like a different thing later because of your feelings. So there's no truth in the now for you guys. There's only truth in the now for us. You get that?
I want that. I'll trade.
But see, for us, we still can't let our emotions get involved. It has to be intuition now. It can't be, you know, and it can't be like let's say we're trying to decide whether or not to be with a person, okay? We can go, well, should we be with the person or not? And it comes up no. Okay, but that's probably about right now, though, still. That's not like, you know, forever. For you guys, it's like go through the whole cycle and then see if you really, you know. So in a certain sense, it's more permanent. You can make permanent decisions by really wading through everything. It's just very similar to intuition for Brittany, but it's just a yes or a no gut. It's in the gut, you know. Ours is in the spleen. It's kind of similar, but ours is like a little more like oogie booga, you know. Okay. There's different personality profiles and incarnation crosses when you look at your chart. We are done with most of the basics, but an incarnation cross, I gave you a flyer about what that is. It's like there's so many of them, and they're basically about your journey or your path through life. That's really about, like what you're supposed to do this lifetime. So it's really interesting to go look that up on the computer. I'm not going to go over any of them because there's so many of them. But for instance, an interesting little fact, I am the right angle cross of the unexpected, which is kind of fun, as you can imagine, or adventurous. And it just so happens that my boyfriend is also the right angle across the unexpected. And that is really crazy, right? Because we have completely different charts. We don't have anything else in common. Okay? So, but for some reason, we're both doing the unexpected thing together. So, she's got the vessel of love, which is very beautiful. It's got a beautifulness to it, because it's all about love, you know? And, Ben, I don't remember what yours is.
Distraction.
Oh, yeah. Ben's like job in life is to distract people, kind of in a certain way.
So I'm just wondering what that is, because I'm reading on the site. It says
You distract them with the truth, I think, is what it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it's like these aren't the droids you're looking for.
It is kind of like that, actually. It is
So
kind
am
of
I
like
supposed
that.
to be a spy, or
It is kind of like that, though, Ben, because that would be using your distraction power for good to protect people, right?
Yeah.
And that's your Jedi mind power, right? And
Yeah.
you're using your distraction always for good. And mostly, I would say, you're going to, most people are just going about their job, their daily grind, their routine. They're just doing the same things over and over again, every day. And it's a box that they're, like, trapped in, And you can distract them with the truth, okay? Because you can kind of see how, if you know Ben, he's a very social person. So you can see how he kind of just goes around and distracts people. Like, you can just bring God right into anything. The feeling of unity. I'm not talking about a particular kind of God, religious-wise or anything, but bring that oneness, into stuff. Kind of like as a distraction, a fun distraction for people almost. It's interesting.
So you can change the course, certain situation may be going like a negative way.
Yeah.
And he can come in and pull it a positive way, but with the truth.
That's true. That's
right.
I think that's
Is that
true.
what you're trying to get? Is that what you're
Does that resonate all bit? Do you feel like that could happen?
That's what people have told me.
Yeah. And he's a projector, so there is that thing too. He's running their energy through him. you know, you have to look at all his centers and all that, but that's kind of what he's supposed to do for, it's in terms of actions. That's what your incarnation cross is. What are your guys' prevention? So maybe you're supposed to like, okay, he's a manifestor, so maybe he's supposed to like,
A dentist?
well, like educate people in advance of where they should not go, you know, or like what they could do to make things healthy now, right? Like before it gets bad, because also if you say it and inform people, then there's going to be a certain decision-making thing about that. You can prevent, you know, you can prevent the bad or the just regular old annoying stuck thing from happening again. What's your cross?
Left angle cross of cycles.
I've not seen that one before, but I'm sure it has something to do with understanding the cycle of everything. We have been talking about cycles with the emotional authority with you too, so I'm sure it's much more interesting probably once you read about it.
Now that's a channel
Online.
too, right?
Huh?
The channel of cycles. Isn't there a channel of cycles?
There's channels that are called all different kinds of things. Some people call channels one thing, some people call other channels some other things. So let's not get into that right now. But go look it up because it's about what you're supposed to do this lifetime. So you'll probably intuitively connect to it since you get the intuition. And I forget what else I was going to say, but we're going to move on to profiles. This is the simplistic on profiles, okay? The number 1 archetype is an investigator. The number 2 archetype is a hermit. The number 3 archetype is a martyr. The number 4 archetype is a social networker or opportunist. I like to call it the social networker. It's called the opportunist if you look at the literature. The number 5 archetype is the heretic. There are a bunch of 5-1s in here. And the number 6 archetype is the role model. So in human design, everything is about the unconscious and the conscious. What happened when you were conceived that's kind of unconsciously in you still, and what happened when you were born that is consciously part of your personality that you know that you use. So anything that's red is unconscious in human design. When you're looking at like gates or connections, you can't really see, well, you can see like connections on your chart that are red, and then connections that are black. The ones that are black are your conscious connections that you know you've been using your whole life. The ones that are red are your unconscious connections that you do have some energy or some strength in. The first archetype in your profile is your conscious archetype. Second archetype is your unconscious. So I am a 1-3, so I am consciously the investigator and unconsciously the martyr. You are a 3-5, I think. She is consciously the martyr and unconsciously the heretic. 5-1s are consciously the heretic and unconsciously the investigator. And I don't know what Karen was.
What is a 5-1?
Oh, wrong.
Wow. We're on the right.
3 5-1s.
And then what was it? Unconsciously the what?
Consciously the heretic
Mm-hmm.
and unconsciously the investigator. I love 5-1s. I'm always around 5-1s. It seems like they're always around me. Because they are so not conventional in a certain way. And because they know they're the heretic, so it's like their identity is based on being the heretic. They're not, they never were under the illusion that they were part of the mainstream really in a certain way. The 3-5s are like the risk takers, or like the crazy like motorcycle riders, you know? They're like, I mean, okay, maybe not motorcycles, but you know what I'm saying, the feeling. Like Brittany does not mind doing crazy stuff to her hair all the time. My boyfriend's a 3-5 also, and he loves riding his motorcycle all the time.
Okay.
There's a lot of different ways you can come out, but it's like there's a risk-taking, like adrenaline junkie kind of thing that's like, yeah, let's do it. And the cool thing is about that is that it can kind of free other people up that you're around to stop being so like holding on so tight, you know. And the 3-5s, you know, they're consciously the martyr, so people will look at them right away because they are kind of a little living on the edge enough that you're going to draw attention to yourself. So people will look at them right away and use them as like the example for something, right? Which is kind of like being the martyr, But it's like they use that energy and attention for good. They use that like to fuel their personality. It's like not even a problem for them, you know? Whereas my martyr is unconscious, so it's like I don't ever am completely aware of how much my energy is getting used by everybody else around me, you know? So, and there's different things about each profile that are specific to each profile. If you look, I gave you a whole 3 pages on that. If you're a 5-1, they have a certain kind of unconventional knowledge they're supposed to use once society goes into a complete disrepair place. It's like, we're supposed to like, you know, something's completely broken down and not working anymore, and then we call you guys in, like, please help us. And sometimes 5-1s are like, okay, I don't really want to. But you guys have some kind of knowledge to help people from the outside of everything. You're not right in the middle of, you know. And so you're kind of like a leader in an unconventional way, or you could be. Yeah, that's simple since we have 3. Okay, so did we go? We did authority, strategy. We did profiles and incarnation crosses.
Okay, one more question on the cross.
Oh, not self. We have to do not self. Go ahead.
Okay, is that like how we're supposed to carry ourselves in life?
The cross?
Yeah, I've read it's like a life purpose thing.
It's a life purpose, like what you're supposed to do, but I wouldn't take it too seriously like that, the way that you're saying it to me.
Yeah.
Because that, you know, whatever you're supposed to do, you're going to do. You know, there's nothing that's going to keep you from doing it.
Okay.
You know, I'm the unexpected. I'm going to be unexpected no matter what. You know, she's going to be loving or be carrying some particular flavor of love to people no matter what she does.
I'm just gonna send love out to everyone.
And Ben's going to distract people no matter what happens, you know. So that's a good question. You have gates. You have gates within your centers. Some of them are lit up and some of them are not lit up. When you have a color around a number in your centers, that is a gate that is lit up because a planet was in that gate.
Oh.
Now, you guys have to leave, but if you didn't have to, I would say to look at these cards and look at all your gates, because if you have the Tao Oracle of the I Ching, you have these, there's different cards, but these are my Oracle cards for the Tao Oracle. You have 64 different aspects of the I Ching, which is from the ancient Chinese philosophy, okay? It's the Tao. It is like more ancient than all of our religions, actually, in the West. So they're all qualities of that consciousness goes through as a cycle, as part of a cycle. And you can break those qualities of consciousness up into different numbers. You can break it up into 3, you can break it up into 7, 9. You can break it up into 64 if you want to get really, really specific. And that is what the I Ching does. And those gates are where you had planets or asteroids or weird star figures. Mostly planets and asteroids in human design would be in one of your gates there. So that if you have a gate lit up and you have another gate lit up on another side of something, you will see a black or a red connection, and those connections make up a big part of your personality. That's what you use every day to do what you do. If you have a gate that is lit up, but it's not connected to another place, you know, then it's like a little resource that you're using. You can use it, but it's not a full connection. So it's not part of your personality like a strength. It's just kind of like an extra thing you have to use as a tangent. You know, it's an interesting thing. If you have a connection that goes halfway, or doesn't go all the way, that is a place where you are learning in this lifetime. You're learning and expanding and growing and learning how to connect that all the way. So that's a really interesting situation, and you can go home and Google human design connection, and then you say the number, and then the number that it goes to, and you look them up. You say human design connection 51 to 62 or whatever, right? Or you can go Human Design Gate 29, but it's easier if you have a book or cards or something to look at the gates, because the gates aren't always completely explained online. It's like you'll get like, oh, it says it's the abysmal, but what does that mean? You know, it's 29. They're not bad or good. They're just qualities of consciousness. So usually they connect to an opposite quality, actually. When you have a full connection, it's like you have the full range. You know, you've connected those two things together in your mind, in your consciousness, so it's like you understand all the way from here to over here, you know? Like, for instance, decrease to increase or whatever are two opposite qualities of consciousness. I don't know if they actually connect in the chart or not, but that's an example. So that's what these are. But you have no obligation to look at them. And the other thing is not self, and that goes by type. If you're a projector, your not self is bitterness. If you're a manifestor, your not self is anger. And if you're a generator, your not self is frustration. That just means that every time you go into frustration, bitterness, or anger, just for your type, just the thing that's not self for your type, okay? So if he goes into anger, that is not himself anymore. He's not being himself. He's just being his lazy, like, stuck place of himself, you know? It's not really a real emotion for him, anger, in a certain way. It's like an excuse to not feel his real heart and his real emotions. For generators, frustration, they'll, like, they're supposed to do stuff, so they kind of, like, get going to do something, and then if it doesn't work completely, like, let's say A, B, C, D are not all connected for some reason, they're going to do something, and it's like beating your head against a wall, you know? It's like frustration, you know? And that's where projectors can come in handy. They can, like, pull you back from the wall and go, no, go over here and do this thing instead. But projectors, they will start to sound so cynical, bitter, sarcastic. What are other words that mean that kind of stuff? It's like sour. It's a sour kind of feeling sometimes, you know? Complaining is quite often projector bitterness, actually, I think. So when projectors go into bitterness, nobody wants to listen to them, and it's they're probably not going to get invited, or they're in bitterness because they thought they didn't get invited anyway, so they're like already in the like, I don't care about anything, screw all of this, you know? It's like that kind of place. So they're not really in their heart. So it's really just that frustration's not a real emotion for you guys. You're not really in your heart when you're frustrated. It's just like an action that won't go through all the way. It's really what it is. And when generators get frustrated, projectors and manifestors need to go, you're being frustrated. You know? Like when projectors get bitter, generators and manifestors should go, you're sounding really bitter to me, you know? And manifestors, if they get angry, just get out of the room. Just don't stay there. You know, it's interesting too, because he doesn't look like a super angry person to me. But often it'll be like, you know, like maybe the person doesn't get angry until when they do, and then it's like get out of the way. Yeah.
Okay. He's a 5-1 manifestor, but he looks kind of like reserved. Is it the 5-1 part that's kind of private? You know.
He's making assumptions, but you know, I don't think that it has to go one way or the other. You could be reserved or not be reserved as a 5-1 manifestor. Yeah. But
most manifestors
let's take
I
those
know,
qualities and say, like, a lot of manifestors have a closed aura, so there can be a feeling of reservedness to them. 5-1s can be a little like kick back, like a little like, whatever, I'm just here until you guys need me, or I'll just go do my own thing or something, you know? Unless they get excited about teaching some kind of weird, unconventional thing, and then they're like, oh yeah, well, how about this, you know? And it's like that kind of vibe. So if as a 5-1, you could be kind of reserved in that way, like kind of chilling, you know? And as a manifestor, you could just have a closed aura and just not really be, and that's what I feel like it is with him, actually. He's just not, he's like, if he was sure that we were all safe, maybe, and if he opened his aura, then he wouldn't be so reserved, so.
Most manifestors I've met so far, they really got this strong talk with them.
Thanks for being with us.